This is Family Business Rules. With 4 decades in the trenches of a family business, Craig Whelan reveals the soul and fervor of families that are knit together by a business and secrets for blending family and business across the generations. Here's Craig Whelan.
Welcome back to my talk with Tooey Courtemanche, founder of Procore Technologies. We talked about moral authority, why flunking out of college was the best thing that ever happened to Tooey, and how he got through the housing crisis in 2008. So Tooey, I'm really shocked that Procore's growth has remained balanced. As I've always said, every company does 3 things: make a product, sell it, and count it. It doesn't matter if you're a barber or General Motors. Those are the 3 things every company does. Often, especially in construction companies, one of those 3 things gets out of whack. How did you ensure a balance between selling, making, and counting at Procore?
Yeah, the way I've always looked at it is it's never a finite point in time. So we are always, by definition, somewhat out of balance, right? So either we're making more product than we're selling more product than we've made, we're counting our sales in a way that is not reflective of the effort that went into either building or selling it, right? So to me, there's always this kind of natural tension. The real tension in my world is less on the counting side and more on the building and selling side. And so we're always recalibrating it back to, are we building more than we're selling? Are we selling more than we're building? And frankly, it's funny, I mentor some founders of startup technology companies. And I was telling one of them today about it's so important that you get that balance right? You don't overcommit on the building side and then forget to sell, which frankly was Procore's first 5 or 6 years of our existence. I was so fixated on solving the problem that I almost forgot to go out and sell the product. And that's an exaggeration, but that is very much one way to look at it. And then we realized in 2015, very late in our cycle, that if we actually really focused on go-to-market, that we would be able to expand our footprint dramatically across the global construction economy. And that played out. But my advice to founders is to don't do that, which is to constantly be recalibrating as you go to make sure that you're building as much as you're selling and you're selling as much as you're building. And it's not an easy balance to strike because at any given day, let's be real, you got to make payroll, right? So you may end up selling more than you built. And then, so you just have to be pragmatic, but you also have to be intentional. And that's actually one of my big philosophy kind of learnings over time, which is be intentional. Don't be reactive. Entrepreneurs love to overextend themselves and then firefight every single day to try to make up for the foibles of their decisions, right? I think that there's something to be said for you should extend yourself, but you also should be really intentional about building your skill set as you go and get out of firefighting mode as much as possible and be as proactive as possible.
These 2 are not exclusive. I get that. I'm going to ask you this question though, because I'm extremely curious. You're a people guy, but you're also a systems guy. A lot of contractors out there, they have strategy, and I'm going to ask you to choose one. Choose one. You can't choose both. Can't choose half of one, half the other. Would you rather have good people or good systems?
Good people every time. I can put a system in under good people any day of the week. The systems are a dime a dozen. Lots of competing systems will actually work in the same environment as long as you've got good people.
I have a story at Whelan, probably 25 years ago. We had a marketing guy, and he was absolutely the best. He absolutely the best. The guy could sell like crazy. And he did account for literally 50% of Whelan's shares. And the jobs that he sold had such good margins, maybe 80% of our revenue. And we were in an all-company meeting, and one of our operational guys were talking, maybe a project manager or something. And I looked over to this guy, and I caught him rolling his eyes. After the meeting, I asked him to come in my office, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to have to fire you." And he was stunned. He just was stunned. He said, I don't know what to say. Why? I said, "You rolled your eyes when Steve was talking." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You rolled your eyes. It tells me what you think of Steve." And he said, "Well, Steve's a jerk." I said, "Well, actually, Steve's not a jerk, but you don't you think you're better than him. He said, I am better than him. I sell more than anybody does in this company. Anybody went on. I said, that's exactly the kind of culture that if I don't nip it in the bud right now will spread to this company. And I said, I can't have that. He was stunned. He was mad. He was angry. We're friends today, but quite frankly, for the next 10 years, we didn't talk to each other. And after I did that, so many people said, thank you so much. It was so difficult expressing our opinions around this guy. And if that was going to be acceptable, then we were going to get that way as well. We'll start rolling our eyes, fight fire with fire. What did you do at Procore to maintain the culture? I mean, Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I agree with it. To this day, how do you keep the culture at Procore alive and the way you want it? I mean, every company has culture. I'm talking about a good culture and one that's positive. How do you do that?
Values. Okay, so we've been very intentional, Craig, since really day one about our values. And we hire to our values. We manage to our values, and we fire to our values. We believe that values are the foundation of everything. And the fact that you chose the hard path with that one individual, which was clearly from a business standpoint in the short term, keeping that person around made all the sense in the world. But you recognize that the long-term impact of the business was going to be far greater than any short-term gain. So to me, it's all about values and people understanding your values. And one other aspect of it too, which is the reason we don't have that person that you just mentioned at Procore, is we also hire to hungry, humble, and smart. And we never violate one of those values. And really, it's really important because if you get, I've said this before and you probably heard me say it, but if you get hungry and smart, you're going to get the brilliant jerk usually. And those people are toxic to the culture. So we value humility at Procore. And so we hire to hungry, humble, and smart, plus our values. And it seems to work really, really well. Steve Zahm, my co-founder, is also our chief culture officer. We invest heavily in culture at Procore because frankly, we believe if you get the people right, you're going to get the business right. And so we invest a lot of money and a lot of effort around this. And I'll never forget, Craig, when I went to the board of directors, it was probably around 2017. And I said, Steve, who was the president of Procore at the time, I said, Steve's going to move on from this role and he's going to become our chief culture officer. I believe that there were some giggles around the table in the boardroom when I said that. And I said, no, you don't understand. If we get culture right, this is going to be the biggest force multiplier we can have. And so trust me, we're going to just put all of our effort into this. And it has paid great dividends. And I'm really proud to say, Procore was ranked the 5th best company in the US to work for last year on Glassdoor. You can't buy those kind of accolades. Those are only given to you by your employees because you get it right.
I was living in Orlando 10 years ago, and a local restaurant, California Kitchen, won the #1 restaurant in all of Florida award, and that's a pretty big deal. I mean, Florida obviously is a really huge tourist state, and to win the #1 restaurant award was amazing. So they held their annual meeting, and all the employees were there, and the owner of the company stood up and held the certificate up and just said, look at this, and he says, stare at this. And everybody was clapping and clapping, and he pulled a lighter out of his pocket, and he literally lit the thing on fire and held it up until it was burnt, and it was gone. And he said, we did nothing. He said, we're starting over. And I just thought, wow, that sent a message, didn't it? Like what you did yesterday doesn't matter. We're going forward. Well, Tooey, one quick question regarding your leadership. When I would go on vacation, the people at Wheelan, it was a double-edged sword. Number one, they were glad I was out of the office. Hey, that's great. But what they really, really dreaded was when I got back and I had that new business book that was now all dog-eared and yellow sticky notes, and I come back and oh man, I was sitting on the beach and we are doing everything wrong. It doesn't matter. Good to great, blue ocean strategy, total quality management, doesn't matter. What book has he read lately? And we're heading in a new direction now. Tell me about that. Have you ever had those what book has he read lately moments and thinking, why did I do that?
By the way, probably one of the best questions, Craig, I've gotten in a long time because you nailed it. That is, a lot of the biggest step functions that we've had at Procore is when I went on vacation and I read a book, or I listened to a podcast or something. And yes, everyone dreads about my new idea and one of the ones that is interesting, I got to pull out the book name, but it was written by one of the sales leaders at salesforce.com. And they were talking about how there's this new sales methodology in engineering. And this is probably in the software world, this is probably 10, 12 years ago. And I read about this. And it was just a new way of form your sales organization, which is, by the way, has persisted till this day. And I remember I came back and I'm like, okay, we're gonna reorganize the way we go to market completely. And I just remember the team was like, "What are you doing?" But it stood the test of time. So I read the right book. But yeah, it drives them crazy, doesn't it, Craig? It really drives people nuts.
It does. You know what? I 2005 came back from vacation and had ISO 9000 on the brain. And Rob Kruger came in my office. He said, "Craig," he says, "if we're going to do this ISO 9000, he says, you and I are literally going to write our book, and you promise me you will not change." And I said, "Rob, I promise you." And 19 years later, we're still doing it. So, I mean, you're exactly right. Once you do it, you have to commit to it. You have to stay the course, because otherwise people won't follow you anymore. Tooey, you mentioned engineering. Since I've retired, my wife and I have bought into a minority share of an engineering firm, structural, mechanical, electrical. And it's really exciting. It's, able to keep my my finger on the pulse of the industry. 2 letters scare me to death. You probably know what they are. First one's A, second one's I. Neither one of them scare me individually. You put them together and I'm scared to death. I'm looking at redundant things our structural, mechanical, electrical engineers do. And I told our CEO, I said, "You know what, Chris? We got to be defensive. We got to be offensive, because we're going to get our clocks cleaned right now. Our margins are going to go down to 1/4 of what they are right now because of machine learning." Talk to me about AI. You're a tech guy. You've got the inside baseball. What's going on? What's our industry going to look like? And let's not talk about construction, because obviously AI isn't going to lay block or weld steel. I get that, but engineering, what's going to happen?
Well, let me say one thing. I made that exact same comment the other day at our customer advisory board, and all of our subcontractors, the big specialty contractors, said, "No, haven't you seen the robotic tile setter?" So it's also going to hit. It's also going to hit our industry, and that kind of got me like thinking, wow, there's nothing is off limits. Just here's the way I look at it: is I maybe this is because I'm an eternal optimist, but you look at the big technology trends that are maybe the inflection points over time, right? That you go all the way back to like the steam engine, and there were people that back then that were like, wow, this is going to take all these jobs away. But if you look at the fundamentals for and then you look at just the industrial revolution, then you look at the advent of a computer or the iPad or whatever. Every single one of these, there was a group of people that said this technological advancement is going to take jobs. Well, that can't be true, because if you look at historical unemployment rates in the U.S., there's no correlation at all. In fact, I think what technology does is it enables productivity. And so let's look at your engineering firm, for instance. Yes, some of the tasks that they're going to do are going to be rendered useless because it's going to be done by a machine. But ultimately what's going to happen is, because that's going to be true across the entire board for all engineering firms, every engineering firm is going to up-level their capabilities, and every person, the knowledge worker that works at an engineering firm, is going to be able to do more with less. That's why this whole concept of a co-pilot is not haphazardly named, right? When Microsoft invented the concept of a co-pilot, what it meant was there's going to be some helpers at your side, because you're still the pilot, that's going to enable you to do more with less. So now a structural engineer is going to, instead of being a lone wolf, is going to have 25 agents that are going to be AI agents that are going to be working alongside them, allowing them to do much more work and much more knowledgeable work than they were doing before. So I'm kind of not of the camp that this is going to take jobs. Now, some jobs will get displaced, but then those people are going to be up-leveled to do other things. So ultimately, I just see this as a productivity increase. And if you look back at our industry, the construction industry, one of the lowest productivity gain industries on the planet over the last 20 to 30 years. We're long overdue for productivity increases. And so I think it's a net positive.
You mentioned construction. I'm going to point out a ratio. When I got in construction in 1977, I tracked this every single year. For 30 years, we averaged $1 million in revenue per employee. Now, we're a construction management firm, but if we had 24 employees, we did about 24 million. And we hit 100 employees in 2013, and we did 100 million in 2013. From 2013 to 2023, we stayed at 100 employees, and we went from 100 million to 600 million. Now let that sink in. We were literally doing 6 times the amount of work with the same employee. I will have to say, I'm not blowing smoke. I will have to say, Procore and the technology you guys brought to us were a huge, huge part of those productivity gains. I had a mantra at Wheelan. I said, we're going to grow really fast, slowly. And what I meant by that, our revenue is going to go fast, but we're not going to do it because we're not reading our subcontracts and we're not reading our contracts with our owners and we're skipping submittals. That's going fast. Going fast slowly means we're actually continuing to do all of the things we needed to do. And I look at it and say, how could we have done that without Procore? Impossible. Tooey, we're going to wrap this up here a little bit. I've got 5 daughters. How do you balance raising kids and travel necessary to build a nationwide company? Now, my daughters they're gone now. They're all married and a lot of grandkids. That's a struggle. And there's going to be guys listening and gals listening to this podcast, and they're going to be saying, you know what? Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I don't want to spend majority of my nights at the Hilton Garden Inn, waking up in the morning, not sure what town I'm in. You've done that. You've done that for years. That has a real impact on family. Your wife, your son. How do you mitigate that? How do you, first of all, I'm not asking you to justify it. I don't think you can justify it, but how do you mitigate it?
It's maybe a little easier today, Craig, than it was when I was doing it because, we're all now remote workers by kind of definition. But I will tell you this, I think it's probably one of the most fundamental questions that anybody should ask themselves when they're choosing a job, a career, a lifestyle, is what is most important to you and how are you going to regret making the decisions that you're making today? Because, I think about this so much. My son's 25 and fortunately for me, he's one of my best friends and I have an amazing relationship with him. But I did that. I made a lot of sacrifices in our relationship because I was fixated on Procore. I don't know if there's any easy answers. All I can tell you is choose your spouse wisely, number one, because they're going to be the force multiplier when it comes to your family, as far as I was concerned. And do every little piece you can, sacrifice every little piece you can to be with your family when you can be with your family. And I think the other one is, I did not do very well at this, Craig, but be as present as you possibly can when you're there. It's so hard, but the dividends are huge.
The fact that we took business books on family vacations with us does not say good things about either one of us. I will tell you that right now. My most poignant conversation happened one night. I was doing a lot of traveling, and it was late at night, maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I called my wife and I said, how was your day? Good. How was your day? Good. And then I got all done. I said, well, good night, honey. I love you. She said, good night. I love you too. Happy anniversary. Oh, I was like, oh, that's 25. She goes, yeah. I said, that's one of your big ones, right? She goes, yeah, that's one of the big ones. And I thought to myself, it's just jewelry at this point. How much, right? I mean, because you're dead to rights, it's not going to work.
Can I tell you a quick story? This is funny, but my grandfather was also an entrepreneur, and he used to travel from Los Angeles to Oregon by car to go see his clients. And this is back in probably the 30s and the 40s, right? So back in the day. And he told me this story about my grandma would travel with him. And so they were in Barstow at a gas station, and she got out to use the restroom, and he was sitting in the front seat of the car, and he was so deep in thought about something that was related to his business. When the gentleman was done filling his fuel tank up, he paid him and he drove off. 20, 30 minutes, some crazy amount of time later, he looked to his right and realized that his wife was not in the car. And he said that was the longest drive back to a fueling station that he'd ever had this entire life. And so I think about that story all the time when I'm not present. There's the inverse of that is important. Like, be present and don't leave your wife at a gas station.
You know what? And Tooey, my wife tells a story. Unfortunately, it's true. She sent all the kids away one night on February 14th for Valentine's. She made me a really, really nice romantic dinner at our dining room table there at our house. And I fell asleep. I was so exhausted. I sat down and I fell asleep, and I thought, you know what, she doesn't deserve this. But Tooey, this has been very enjoyable. I have to end this by asking, you know, you're mid-50s, surprise, surprise, you're not going to live till 1 million. What does retirement look like down the road for Tooey Courtemanche? I mean, you're not going to turn it off. I know that.
No. So I think about this a lot because I want to make sure that the time I have left is used to its fullest. Retirement's going to be made up of 3 things. One is going to be family. So I'm going to spend a lot more time with my family. Hopefully by then I have some grandkids and all to do that. The second piece is going to be very selfish, but I'm an introvert and I really enjoy spending time by myself and I really enjoy deep thinking. So that's where I go and I spend time at the ranch. I'm taking an online course right now in timber framing. So I'm going to build myself a hay barn here very quickly. And I bought all my tools and I'm getting up to speed. I'm learning SketchUp again so I can actually do all my design and my joinery work. So I'm going to devote a lot of time to myself because I haven't had a lot of time in my career to give to myself. And then I'm going to find a cause that where I feel like I can give the most to. I haven't chosen yet, what that will be. And I want to choose wisely. I know this about myself, Craig, which is the minute I get devoted to something, I'm going to go all in. So I want to choose wisely and I want to go big. But in the meantime, I have a higher calling, which is, my shareholders in Procore and my vision. So I'm focused on that now, but I know my retirement is going to be very busy and fruitful.
Stay relevant. Tooey, thank you. What a privilege. I really, really appreciate the time that you've carved out of your very busy day to do this. And keep in touch. I'd love to see more of you. But thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm a big fan of you, Craig, and everything that Wieland, and so I'm just always been a fan, and I want you to know that I'm very grateful for everything you've done. Please, when next time you come back to California, let me know so I can we can go get another cup of coffee. And in the meantime, I just wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Tooey, and that'll do it for this episode of Family Business Rules. Please make sure you leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. All the best.
You've been listening to Family Business Rules. If you'd like to gain invaluable and practical insights on leadership, communication, and maintaining great relationships, both at work and at home, connect with Craig at craigwieland.com.